This is my 4.2 data collection methods video. So to begin with, I'll walk you through the assignment and introduce it. So throughout this, I'm going to start by looking at the types of research design that we have. And as these are the building blocks of where your research will come from, we will look at these first. This will be followed by primary and secondary research sources. Then the classification of data. Finally, we'll look at quantitative and qualitative data. And firstly, looking at the difference between research design and research methods. Research design is basically we'll look at the framework and it as a overall. So you'll decide what kind of data you want to collect before then choosing a research method, so a type of data collection method, or how you want to analyze this. This is mostly categorized by, firstly, what sample you take and what kind of subjects you get, and also whether you want to do quantitative or qualitative data. So the first type of research design is experimental. This is obviously done in a controlled environment. It's not natural, and it will the researcher will look to manipulate the variables in order to see what he is going to research. So, as it says, the effect that the independent variable will have on the dependent variable is looked at in great depth, and overall, this is a very artificial setting. So, looking at the advantages and disadvantages of experimental research designs, the advantages obviously are it's easy to repeat as you've manipulated it, you've almost created it, so you would be able to do it again if needed. And this repeatability is created by the fact it's basic and it's straightforward to carry out. Also, at the end of it, you get clear conclusions due to the high levels of control that you have got throughout the test. Moving on to the disadvantages, because it's so you creating it, this creates the chance for there to be errors. These could be human or could be systematic, which is also because these errors might also creep in due to an inability to control all variables. Of course, however artificial you make it, there's still going to be influence and effects that could change the results. And it is also slightly more time consuming than some of the other types of research design. Finally, looking at a scenario that links back to the gymnasts, the effects on a gymnast drinking a hypertonic drink pre-performance on performance. So, gymnasts, what effect a really sugary drink would have on their performance, and whether it would boost them or hinder them, or whether it is personal and what personal effects it might have. Moving on to comparative data. Comparative data is done by taking two or possibly more subjects that are selected with similar characteristics. However, there are going to be slight differences. So one may be taken from England's setup within gymnastics, and one might be taken from America's set of gymnasts, and then these are compared, put through whatever kind of design, whatever kind of research methods you choose, and then they are obviously compared to see what characteristics separate them ability wise. These can compare individuals or countries, and these can be done quantitatively or qualitatively. Advantages. So advantages include increasing understanding between the two groups, so you know what the two groups are doing differently that is perhaps working, perhaps not working, and they can kind of learn from this. Obviously it's cheaper, as there's not a lot that really, it's not like the experimental one where there's a lot, it's quite natural almost. It's quicker and easily accessible. Moving on to the disadvantages, it can be difficult to control variables, as you're obviously getting two different people, so you'll be getting them from different camps, different places. There'll be something different, and this then makes it, they might do things different. This might make it incredibly difficult to then control the variables that could affect the test. Looking at a scenario, you get two gymnasts of the same age bracket. So this could be, say, 14-year-olds, but you get them from different countries' setups with different training, and these are then compared to see which one is better in their particular event, and maybe what areas they're better at. Moving on to the next research design, and this is a case study. So this basically paints a detailed picture of an individual or team, and it can allow for every area of the athlete to be looked at and to see where their weaknesses perhaps lie, where their strengths perhaps lie. And obviously this will be done by you're doing the following stages. Obviously you do a bit of background research on the team or individual you're looking at. You then takes notes on potentially performances and other things that you might be looking at. Conduct interviews so that you get to see the team or the individual almost as their personality a bit more, see a bit more, gain a bit more quantitative data towards how they feel, their emotions. And then you can collect and analyze data. This might be video analysis on performances. And this will be done through quite a long period of time, because then you will have to write the report. Moving on to the advantages and disadvantages. The advantages could be there's lots of, obviously on that one person or one team, you gain a lot of detailed data. And it can establish ideas and theories as to why they might be successful at one thing and maybe not so successful at another. However, bias can sometimes occur, and it can be, obviously you're looking at an individual and you're gaining a detailed picture on them, so this can mean that it's very time consuming, and it also can be quite subjective because it's one person looking at a performance and other data, and this can lead to a low reliability. A scenario would be a personal profile on a GB athlete to see within their performances what their strengths are and what areas they're perhaps weaker. Moving on to longitudinal research. And this type of research is correlational, and it is taken over a long period of time. I said months, it's more years, and this can be years and years. It can be a very long period of time. It discovers relationship between variables, but it's an observational research, so it's going to be someone observing a group of people over a long period of time. As I said, the studies carried out in a group of people. Collected data data is collected over specific times throughout the over the period. So this means that there's certain events and certain times in the calendar, sports-wise, where this data will be taken, and obviously it's quite natural. There's no manipulation of variables. The advantages of this will over time, obviously, because it's done over a long period of time, it will show changes in behaviour. It can survey, both quantitative and qualitative data depending on what you're looking for. And obviously the data can be easier if you can get a group of people that you know, because you have that rapport, and this will move into one of the disadvantages. So this will mean if it's someone you know, they may be less likely to give up and not give as much effort, because it's a long time period. If it's people you don't know, they may begin to tail off and not work as hard towards the end. Obviously, it's extremely time consuming, and to get any real effective data, you have to have a large sample size. Moving on to cross-sectional data research design, and this is an observation in a natural environment. It makes comparisons at a single point. And it's done, this is why it's such a cross-sectional analysis, because it's done using a variation of different groups. So this might be, if you were going to do some research on a gymnast, it could be female gymnast age 10 and under, age 10 to 12, 12 to 15, 15 to 18, and then 18 plus. And then it will look at compare the different variables between the different groups. And looking at advantages for this, is cheap and quick and easy to conduct. The data on all variables can be collected at once, as it's only just painting a slight picture, not a detailed picture like the cross case study. And the only thing is, it can be lack accuracy, as it can be slightly biased. And the final type of data to look at is correlation, which research designed to look at, which is correlation. This has no manipulation on the variables, and it looks at the relationship between two variables. So this will obviously end up in a graph sort of situation. It will look at whether there's a strong correlation between two, whether one, the x-axis or the independent variable affects the dependent variable. And looking at the scenario, the scenario would be examining the relationship between a gymnast's thigh girth and height. Finally, to end this section, I'm going to look at which is potential. And this very much depends on what you're looking for. So if you were looking for a detailed picture on one, you may go towards the case study. But if you were looking for a group and not observational thing, you may look more towards sort of the cross-sectional analysis or something like that. And it just very much depends on whether you want your design to be natural or not natural. There are many affecting factors when deciding what the best type of research is that you could choose. And then finally, obviously, it's just about choosing what sort of scale you're going to do it on, whether you want to do it on a small scale or a big scale, look at many people over a period of time, or just narrow your interest into one person and gaining a detailed profile